This is Frank Consella with the Crested Butte Home podcast, and this week we are talking about food, specifically fermented foods. And if you're wondering what is that, well, sauerkraut's probably the most commonly known fermented food, but there are others, and my guest, Renee Newton, has created a business called Fireweed Ferments here in Crested Butte, all about making fermented foods. So I thought it was a really interesting subject. I hope you do as well, and you can visit Crested Butte Home for all of my podcasts as well as real estate. And let's go ahead and get on to the interview with Renee. On the Crested Butte Home podcast today, my guest is Renee Newton. So tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and all of that stuff.
Hey Frank, thanks for having me. I am from North Carolina. Been out here about 10 years. Born in Georgia, so grew up kind of all over the South. Mm-hmm. And then decided to get away from the heat and humidity and found myself out here in Crested Butte, Colorado.
How did you find Crested Butte from North Carolina and Georgia?
So the short answer is I had friends who went to Western.
Okay.
Yes, that is what I tell strangers.
That's been a common answer, actually, through all these podcasts. It's amazing how many people in one way or another, they maybe didn't go to Western, but they knew somebody or whatever. Somehow Western is in there a lot. So you just came out sight unseen, or had you visited your friends?
I came out sight unseen. I had never been west of the Mississippi other than going to Vegas for roller derby conventions. And just knew I would enjoy being out here in Colorado, so kind of just packed up my Explorer, me and my dog, couple boxes, and drove out here sight unseen, then was in Gunnison at first for a little while. Moved out here in January.
Okay.
So as a Southerner, that was quite a
change.
Quite a steep transition.
Had you done some of Georgia and North Carolina, they have mountains and everything, so did you hike and mountain bike or ski at all?
I had snowboarded a couple times in Virginia. So I lived in Christiansburg, Virginia for a short stint in high school, and we just went to snowshoe a couple times and winter place a couple times. And then started learning to ski once I moved to Crested Butte.
All right. And so I got to back up here. You said roller derby, and that's okay. So let's talk about roller derby. How'd you get into that?
So in 2005, when I was in Wilmington, North Carolina, me and a couple girls started a team out there called the Cape Fear Roller Girls. Austin, Texas had kind of brought back the resurgence in the early 2000s, and then it's just been trickling all over the country and the world really ever since.
Okay.
So I played in North Carolina from 2005 to 2015. And then had a team out here for a little while, the Gunnison Valley Roller Girls. But due to the seasons and the lack of available females, we had a hard time keeping it going here.
Oh, bummer. That sounds really fun. Where did you do that here? Because isn't it technically supposed to be like a banked?
So there are only 4 bank leagues in the country. Most roller derby now is called flat track. So you just have a track kind of drawn out on the floor. So we would actually skate at Big Mine, the ice rink up here, and then in Gunny we would skate at Jorgensen. Which makes it difficult because all winter they are ice.
Right.
So we don't really have a accessible skating facility. And then in the summer when we do, everyone's just so busy in July and August that,
Right, they didn't have time.
Yeah.
Especially, they're probably already playing softball or biking, or let alone the work equation. So, but what did you study there in college in North Carolina?
I have a biology degree and a chemistry degree from UNCW, and then a random French business minor.
Random French business minor.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that degree might come into play here as we continue to talk. But so you moved here, and then what did you do when you first moved here for work and play and other things too?
So I moved out here shortly after college, and my first real work was at Rumble. So I worked at the Rocky Mountain Biological Labs as a research assistant on a couple different projects up there over the first couple summers I was out here.
Gotcha. And who were you? So you're assisting like a graduate student? Or
yeah,
what?
Some graduate students from Arizona working on respiration rates in subalpine meadows and different mustard varieties and how the altitude kind of affected their growth.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And was that something that you've ever thought you might pursue again down the road, like that kind of research? Or
I do love the research. Do not currently see myself going back to get my master's unless it would be for teaching, which initially in school I had planned on being a high school kind of biology or chemistry teacher, and then realized I was terrified of teenage children.
Well, I'm sure you'd get used to it. It's funny. My wife was a high school chemistry teacher for 15 years or so, back on the Front Range, and then she actually ended up teaching math more than science here at the Crested Butte Community School. But you could do it if you want it someday. Anyway, but and then where'd you end up after RMBL?
So I worked at Mario's for a while with Danny, kind of when he was taking over Mario's. So I got to be there with the transition, which was fun. And then I started working for Karen Hoskin and Bryce Hoskin at Montanya's. So they hired me as a full-time distiller for them at the distillery. Okay,
yeah, and that's she recommended you as an interviewee, so that's why you're here. But so did your background in chemistry and stuff, did that help with the distilling as you were taking that on?
It did. Which little did I know in school that distilling would be something that my degrees kind of were really gearing me towards. But yeah, there's the biological components because you have the yeast, which is alive and eating sugars and creating different compounds. And then you have the chemistry side as far as, boiling points of the water and the different bricks of the sugars. And yeah, so it kind of really came together in a fun, functional way to make rum.
And how long, or describe that apprenticeship process?
So, we just kind of jumped right in. Bryce is the head distiller over there, so his recipe, and we kind of just went right to work. He trained me how to run the stills, how to make the washes, how to do the bottling and the barreling and everything. And yeah, we kind of just worked really close for a while, and then a couple, year into it was kind of on my own, just running the stills by myself. And yeah.
And that's all, if I remember correctly, that a lot of that's not here. Well, some of it's in town, and then some of the bottling then is down in Riverland.
All of the rum is made right on Elk, which is super cool. So you can just go right up there and see everything. And then, the rum is taken right down to Riverland where it's barreled, aged, and then bottled. And they do everything by hand out there.
And is that still your main job then?
It is not. Okay. No, I still fancy the rum, and still connected with the company a little bit, but I am not the distiller anymore.
Well, at least one. Well, what are you doing now, I guess?
So I have started a fermented food company called Fireweed Ferments, and we kind of, along with my degree still with the living biology side of things, we are making live probiotic fermented foods. Okay,
so I guess start by defining what live fermented foods are.
So there's all kinds of ferments. We do mostly a lacto ferment, so it's a salt-based ferment, mostly kimchis and sauerkrauts. So like you have a cabbage, and then you do a salt brine, basically. Okay. The brine's going to wick out the moisture and, in a sense, kind of preserve the food. Okay. There's living bacterias and yeasts on all of our food, and these little kind of living organisms, kind of change the molecular makeup of the food, and preserve it in a way that makes it living and probiotic. So there's, millions and billions of little, live bacterias and yeast that you consume, which are good for you, good for your gut and your biome.
Mm-hmm. How are they good for your gut and your biome?
Well, having a fermented food, you have an easily accessible range of vitamins and minerals that your body can more easily digest when they're in that state. Vitamin C's, A's, enzymes, absorbic acids. It creates a bunch of acids in the process, which are good for you.
And why is it more easily absorbable?
It kind of starts to break down in the fermenting process.
Okay.
Kind of breaks those chains down.
So so fermenting, usually if someone says fermenting, your first thought might be alcohol, right?
Yes.
So how are those related then?
Yeah, so for example, with the rum, the wash is fermented. So you have a yeast that comes in and eats, in this case, the sugar, and then it creates alcohols as a byproduct. It also creates like CO2 and heat as other byproducts. So it's almost like alchemy. You have one product and then you change it completely, and then so you have this big tank full of yeast, sugar, and water. Then you throw it in a still, and out comes an alcohol. Mm-hmm. So in my case, you would have, say, with the kimchi, you'd have cabbages and then salt. Mm-hmm. Throw it in a crock, and out comes kind of a different product that's more broken down, more alive. And just different. It's tangy. It makes like acetic acid, so you almost have like a pickling taste.
Sure. Yeah.
Which originally, side note, real dill pickles were fermented.
But they're not anymore.
Not really.
Okay.
Bubbies are. No.
What? Well, how did you get into this?
So my proxy brother Toby bought me a book by Sandor Katz called Wild Fermentation, which anyone who's interested in fermentation is kind of an easy intro into it. Gives you just really topical information about a really broad range of fermenting. Sat down, read the whole thing, kind of front to back, and then the next day went to the store and got stuff to make kimchi.
Okay.
Started with just like half-gallon mason jars at the house, and it just kind of kept escalating. People then were wanting to kind of have me share it with them. Then we started doing, regular sauerkrauts and flavored sauerkrauts. And then we got kombucha scobies, and we were doing kombucha. And it kind of just took off from me and went from like just a fun hobby in my kitchen to like having people wanting weekly orders and restaurants wanting it. Like,
where and obviously you don't do it in your kitchen anymore, so where do you...
Yeah, so I've been partnered with Karen and Montanya's for a long time.
Okay.
Kind of using their kitchen.
So you have to go out in the morning or something,
yeah,
I assume?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we do a lot of off-season work, where it's really quiet right now, so we can get a bunch of product kind of going and in the crocks fermenting.
Okay. Because once you jar it, it can stay that way for
once
some time.
Once you cool it down, and to kind of stop the fermentation.
So how do you cool it down?
So the way we ferment with our lacto ferment, it's a oxygen reduced environment in these crocks. So you could Google Polish crocks or German fermenting crocks.
Okay.
And it has this cool water seal, and so you have all your stuff in the crock, and then you have to have a liquid, so the brine, and then there's no oxygen in this environment, so no molds can really grow. So it is, room temperature.
Because it's filled to the top, that's why there's no...
Yeah, so it's got this little water seal that you keep filled with water, and the lid sits in this cool little seal. And so as it's fermenting, one of the byproducts is CO2, right? So it's like fermenting, and the CO2 is coming up. Well, the CO2 can escape through the water seal because the air can diffuse out of the water, but it can't diffuse down the water, because of gravity. So the air can rise up through the water, but the oxygen can't sink down through the water because of the densities.
Got it. It's
and so
I have a picture.
So the CO2 is kind of pushing itself out, and no air, no oxygen is allowed to get in the crock, which helps keep a sterile kind of environment for it to ferment.
Got it. And none of this is cooked, right? It's just it's raw in the brine, in the crock, and then
and
add
not
time.
Pasteurized.
Okay. We'll talk a little bit more about the products. So some people might not be familiar with kimchi. So describe what kimchi is a little bit more.
So we call it Crash's Kimchi. Crash is my roller derby name.
Okay.
Yeah. So kimchi in Korea is eaten with every meal. You get like a little bowl of kimchi, and in their culture, it kind of means anything pickled. And to them, pickled means fermented, not pickled in vinegar like we think in America. Right? Okay. So pickled vegetables is kimchi to the Koreans, but our version is a Napa cabbage base, classically, with daikon radishes, carrot, and bok choy. Okay. So that's the vegetable base. The paste is classically, we do ginger root, onion, garlic, fish sauce, and then Korean red pepper. Okay. Which is what gives kimchi this kind of pretty red color. Yeah. And ours is spicy. We do fresh habaneros in there, so it definitely has a little kick. The vegetables are cut pretty coarsely, so they all have kind of, you can tell it's a radish, you can tell it's bok choy. But the onion, ginger, garlic, that kind of gets blended with the red paste into kind of this bright red, finely dissected paste that then is kind of put over all the rest of the vegetables.
Gotcha. And then sauerkraut is cabbage, and what else goes into that?
Salt. And then we do a classic German sauerkraut, so it has caraway and bay leaves. Okay. And that's it for like a real sauerkraut. Okay. We also do a purple sauerkraut. We add some apples to that, make it a little sweeter. And then we have a pineapple ginger turmeric sauerkraut. That's a lot of fun. That one's kind of bright yellow, a little fruity, and kind of changing people's minds of what they think a sauerkraut is. Okay, so basically that one is not like a German would probably not be at all familiar with that one. Right. But they probably would be with your other one. It'd be a very traditional German or whatever sauerkraut. And then what about the kimchi? My brother-in-law is Korean, so would he feel at home with that? Or would he be like, what is this? This is No, I have had some good reviews from Koreans and families with Koreans, like in the family, and friends that have lived in Korea, and old vets that spent time over there because it became a big part of their life when they were living over there, and then it hasn't been a thing really in America, so it's just kind of getting going with this whole fermented food resurgence.
So you're saying that because of like the habanero and stuff, it's a little bit of a different, more your recipe kimchi than traditional, basically?
Yeah, yes and no. I think that you can find this style of kimchi over there. Okay. But you would also find thousands more.
Well, I was checking out your website when I was researching this interview, and I thought it was a lot of fun because all the products, the kimchi and the sauerkraut, come with not just some food recipe ideas, but some drink recipes. So maybe talk about a couple of your favorite recipes.
Yeah, so the easiest is the kimchi Bloody Mary. So we take the juice that's kind of left over from the kimchi, and you cut it with your tomato juice, right? So you have like your classic Bloody Mary tomato, and then you add a little bit of the kimchi juice to that, and then we do pickled kimchi vegetables as a skewer. So like instead of an olive, which, side note, is fermented also. We do like the daikon and the Napa and kind of skewer that, which is a lot of fun, and then it's probiotic. And then we make a fire cider, which is more of an infusion than a ferment.
Okay.
So we take apple cider vinegar and infuse it with oranges, lemon, jalapenos, habaneros, ginger, onions, all this other wild tonic-y stuff. But it makes a really good hot toddy. So you do like a shot of your fire cider in your hot toddy.
Okay.
Or in your tea.
Okay.
And then the kimchi goes good with grapefruit. So you do like a little bit of the kimchi juice, a little bit of fresh grapefruit, and say like the Platina light rum from Montanya's.
Really? I would never, ever picture grapefruit.
And then it's like spicy grapefruit.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And then you can also take the kimchi and infuse the liquor with the kimchi.
Okay.
So you could take like a bottle of the Platino, add a cup of real kimchi to it, let that infuse for a week, and then you have kimchi flavored.
I think I know what infusion is, but for anyone who doesn't, describe infusion.
Oh, so just taking a product, let's say a fruit or a vegetable, and soaking it in a liquid. So say taking the kimchi and soaking it in vodka or Platino, you're infusing the spirit with the kimchi. And you can do that with anything, fruits.
In this week's Crested Butte Real Estate Minute, I wanted to talk about this podcast a little bit. And one of the things that it's taught me is to become a better listener, especially in an episode like this where I don't know a whole lot about the subject. I really need to carefully listen and still be ready to ask my next question. And that's a really important trait in real estate as well. And it's something that I do pride myself on, and I enjoy being in tune with my clients so that we can work together towards their goals. That's a really important thing to me. So anyway, I just was thinking about that, and I thought I'd mention it. And as always, if you visit my website, crestedbutterealestateagent.com, you can find my contact info there. My name is Frank Consella, and give me a shout, and hopefully I can get in tune with your real estate needs. Let's get back to the show. So you're talking about all this, it sounds like you like flavors and things like that. Do you consider yourself a chef? Are you pretty into cooking at home, or?
So I never thought I was going to end up in the kitchen. My first job was washing dishes when I was 12 at the restaurant where my mom worked at. So I definitely grew up in a restaurant, and I'm very comfortable there, but I've never really considered myself a chef. So to kind of find myself with this company that is creating food has kind of been a little bit of a mental twist for me, but I'm really enjoying it. And I guess, no, I have not thought of myself as a chef.
No? Like when you're at home,
I'm just a maker.
You're just a maker?
I'm just a maker.
Okay. So the name of your company, Fireweed Ferments. So Fireweed is a really cool local flower. For anyone who doesn't know, it's kind of a late summer, big, tall, purple, violet color or whatever. And I've heard you can make tea and stuff out of that. Have you?
Yeah, so the flowers are edible.
Yeah. So have you done some stuff with that then?
We plan to do like a fireweed kimchi where we take the flowers and actually put it into the kimchi.
Okay.
And then fireweed flavored kombucha.
Okay.
And fireweed, one of the reasons we picked that flower is because it's a kind of a staple flower that shows up after a big ecological disaster. So like after the volcano erupts.
Okay.
Fireweeds are one of the first plants to kind of come in and start colonizing.
Sure.
Any civilization that's kind of existed, you have to have a way to preserve your food.
Yeah.
Fermenting is a way that a lot of civilizations figured out how to preserve food and kind of stop the traveling on the road and start building a civilization, because you had a way to like store your food and create a long-term solution. And so fireweeds kind of come in like fermentation and, start colonizing a place and say like, okay, we can put some roots here because we have some roots now that can start growing. We have like a staple. I went on a tangent with that.
No, that was good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting, and we kind of beat around the bush with it, but yeah, the fermenting thing exists because it's a way of keeping food without a refrigerator, basically. And there's a lot of other products that are popular today because, I mean, beer. I think anyone who's been to Mexico, tap water or beer, which one's safer?
Right. Beer.
So you drink beer all day when you're in Mexico. So you've mentioned kombucha a couple times, but it sounds like you don't actually sell that specifically, but talk about that product and why you don't actually.
So yeah, we love the kombucha. Those are fun because you kind of have a living colony that you have to put into your next batch. All kombucha is fermented sweet tea, which is perfect for me because I'm a southerner.
Southern roots,
and make and drink a lot of sweet tea. Now we just ferment it. But most commercial kombucha is pasteurized. So the yeasts that are in kombucha can create a whole lot of CO2 and can cause vessels to actually explode.
Okay.
So, which we have seen happen. We had a bottle like that explode in our refrigerator, and it blew out like a whole shelf. It was terrifying. So we have just kind of chosen to enjoy it ourselves in kind of an undestroyed manner. We're not using heat to kill all the good stuff that we fermented and created, or cold or chemical, because those are kind of the three ways you can pasteurize things. So most commercial kombucha is made. It's pasteurized, so it kills all the living yeasts and bacteria, which is good for long-term storage, right? Because you don't want. But it's silly for our product because we've just spent a month kind of cultivating all of these yeasts and bacteria for your body, and then you would just kill it with the heat. So almost all commercial kombucha, they add back living bacteria. So it's still good for you. And I mean, even a pasteurized kombucha is still good for you, right? But they take like living lactobacillus and they add it back to the product. So it's almost like the probiotics are an ingredient to the kombucha, not an actual byproduct anymore. But always happy to share.
How do you see your products fitting in with there's kind of a Crested Butte lifestyle? So how do you think that plays in with what you're doing and the way people care about their health and a lot of other things here in Crested Butte?
Yeah, I think it's a good fit. It is a very active community, and our products are full of like B12 vitamins that are kind of produced naturally, so have a couple bites of kimchi, or the vitamin C that is in there kind of help with the up and down seasons that we have. And there's no added sugar in the kimchis or the sauerkrauts, so you can really feel good about eating it too. We, trying to stay away from as much of the plastic as we can, so everything's in glass jars and reusable, and then you have a glass or, $1 off if you bring your jar back. The trend of getting back to a food that's closer to a natural state is important, because once... we used to have more fermented food, and then refrigerators kind of came around, and then we started kind of pasteurizing, cooling everything, and we've just really gotten away from it. So the things that we eat that are fermented, we didn't even realize are fermented, like olives or old dill pickles. So yeah, just kind of getting it back to a place that you can feel good about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that comment that you just made. I mean, I wonder how many people were lactose intolerant 100 years ago, or gluten intolerant, lots of different things because of
Crohn's.
just the different ways that we've processed foods, I guess. But yeah, anyway, that's an aside.
Yeah, they're really finding a real connection between your gut biome and your brain chemicals. So like your serotonin is kind of directly connected to what's happening with your gut and your living kind of microbiota in there. And I don't think anyone kind of 5-10 years ago knew that what you're actually eating can really affect what's going on with how you feel.
Sure, and everything else, really, at the end of the day. Yeah. So, well, where do you see Fireweed Ferments going to? What's the growth plan for your company?
Yeah, we're just taking it slow and steady. It's kind of started as a hobby, and it just kind of keeps growing a little bit every year. And I have, people that are into it and kind of supportive, and so. Summers are huge for us. Just the amount of kimchi we go through at Montanya's is, been, 80 pounds, 100 pounds a month up there. So I think it's kind of exciting. Everybody's kind of getting on board, and it's turning into not just like a fun fad, but something that people are realizing needs to be like a kind of commonplace in their diet. So if we could be like a little staple where, you just have a little jar of Crash's kimchi that you pick at throughout the week.
A little side dish or snack or whatever. Yeah. And do you have any employees, or is you
I don't.
Just you?
No,
nice.
my boyfriend Scott helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just kind of us, yeah.
If someone wants to buy your products, where can they go?
Montanya's. Okay. They keep me stocked in a little fridge up there with the different krauts and stuff. And then my website, Fireweed Ferments. Yeah, we have a little Facebook page, little Instagram.
Cool.
And then hopefully be back at Scouts this summer. We were up there last summer, which was really fun. And we're on the menu at Tully's on his Reuben, and just kind of little things here and there that are...
And do you do like the farmers markets too and stuff like that?
We did the Mount Crested Butte Farmers Market, but we did not do the Crested Butte Farmers Market. Okay. It's almost just too big for where we're at right now, and we wouldn't want to jeopardize future endeavors there by maybe like selling out too early or not being able to keep up. So we're going to kind of take our time with that too, and work on kind of building up a little base here before we go into the masses.
Yeah. We'll start to wrap it up a little bit, but we'll change subjects and just, we talked at the very start. You came here kind of sight unseen and maybe not totally a mountain girl yet, but are you now? Like, what are you, bike, ski? What do you do in your free time?
Yeah, I learned how to ski, so I've been doing that every year, which has been a lot of fun. I joke that it is a steep learning curve out here. I've recently picked up the mountain biking and had my downhill pass last year, which is a lot of fun.
Nice.
My goal for this summer is to get my own sup board. But yeah, it's been a big transition. When I first moved out here, we had our first snowstorm, and Gunnison got like a foot of snow. And I woke up, and I was like, day off. And they were like, no, you have to go to work. And I was like, what do you mean? There's a foot of snow outside. What do you mean I have to go to work? And they were like, there's no snow days here. And I was like, how do I get to work? And they were like, you drive.
This is at Montanya's?
This was when I was still in Gunny. Okay. It was at Mario's.
Oh, okay.
But I just, as a Southerner, didn't realize that life existed in a place where you could get that much snow and like everyone just went to school and went to work and like life goes on.
Like an inch or two there just shuts the whole thing down.
Yeah,
right?
You're done. So I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Well, Crested Butte is home for you, so why do you choose to make Crested Butte your home?
I always joke it's the no heat, the no humidity, and the minimal mosquitoes. But over the last 10 years, it's really just felt like home because of the relationships you make, the small love, and, the small community that's capable of producing such large amounts of love. Really feeling welcome and being with kind of like-minded people that understand the need to work hard, play hard, rest hard, like we go 100 miles an hour all the time, and it's just great to kind of be with people that get it and that get up and bike before work and get off work and, go skin the mountain and just kind of, be active all year and find that busyness, but also that calm of like looking around and being like, wow, we really live here.
Yeah, and taking a break to making their breaks to go and bike or hike or ski or whatever they need to do to get right again. But You mentioned it before, but what's the website URL?
Fireweedferments.com.
Okay.
And then, that's our tag on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
And I kind of run it all, so if you want to get in touch with me or have any questions, I'm always down to talk about weird fermented food and kind of share it, because a lot of people still aren't familiar and kind of scared of it. And we all drink beer and tequila, or sodas, or some of them are fermented, so it's like it's everywhere. We just kind of want to keep sharing it. Getting it out there.
Nice. Is there anything else I should have asked, but I didn't, because I don't know enough about this subject, or anything you just want to say?
I just think that it's going to be more and more present in daily life, and kind of the fun science of fermented foods, and engaging with a product that's kind of alive and can change your health is pretty cool.
Well, I just thought of a question I didn't ask that, but you very briefly mentioned Crash as your nickname. So was there a specific Crash or a different story? What's the story behind Crash?
So Crash Nasty, that was my derby
Crash
name.
Nasty even. Oh, nice, that's even better.
And my first name was not Crash Nasty, but I'm very clumsy, and we were lining up for drills one night, and one of the girls said, "Well, I don't want to skate behind her. She always crashes." And so it was Nasty Nate at first, because my childhood nickname was Nate.
Okay.
So we dropped the Nate and Crash Nasty.
Crash.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Coming
Crash
in
Nasty.
hot, generally.
Nice. All right. Well, last question, and that is, who else should I interview?
I think you should touch base with Gina English. She is a local artist. She's been in the farmers market the last couple years, and she's just a talented, artistic, intelligent lady that is super local and has a lot of fun things kind of going on.
Cool. What type of art does she do?
She's a drawer, but she did our logos for Fireweed Ferments.
Okay. Cool.
She did all of our labels and stuff, and she has she does a bunch of the chalkboards around town, like the really big, pretty ones.
Sure. Nice.
And you can kind of just see her around. She's kind of got her little hands in a bunch of different projects here.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that, because I've been trying to figure out. There's so many artists here, and I haven't really been able to interview that many of them. So that's perfect. So I'll have to look her up. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Frank. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's Crested Butte is Home podcast with me, Frank Consella, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed interviewing Renee. And if this is your first episode, just a reminder, you can visit CrestedButte'sHome.com, and you can find all the episodes as well as ways to subscribe to the show there. And you can also find lots of great Crested Butte and Gunnison real estate information there as well. I will see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks again for listening to the Crested Butte is Home podcast.